Hi there, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Whispering Wikipedia. Now we are continuing our reading of the Kangaroo page, and I found it super interesting just to see all the little tidbits, and also I found it interesting to see how large the family of the Macropodidae is, with all of the sub and kind of related different smaller kangaroo families. They talked about kangaroos and the wallabies and wooloos, but they also said that there was 50 other smaller Macropodidae that are semi-related. So that's kind of interesting. Anyway, last time we were talking about, I think, when is it, the Miocene or Pleistocene, when there were larger marsupials, and they were talking about the Boulongmaeans, which is very hard for me to say. Anyway, resuming where we left off, the middle to late Boulongmaeans, Kangaroo and Wanbaroo, lacked digit 1 of the hind foot, and digits 2 and 3 were reduced and partly under the large digit 4, much like the modern kangaroo foot. This would indicate that they were bipedal. In addition, their ankle bones had an articulation that would have prohibited much lateral movements, an adaptation for bipedal hopping. Species related to the modern grey kangaroos and wallaroos began to appear in the Pliocene. The red kangaroo appears to be the most recently evolved kangaroo, with its fossil record not going back beyond the Pleistocene era, which is 1 to 2 million years ago. The first kangaroo to be exhibited in the Western world was an example shot by John Gore, an officer on Captain Cook's ship, the HMS Endeavour, in 1770. The animal was shot and its skin and skull transported back to England, whereupon it was stuffed by taxidermists who had never seen the animal before, and displayed to the general public as a curiosity. The first glimpse of a kangaroo for many 18th century Britons was a painting by George Stubbs. Find it interesting that the taxidermist had to taxidermy an animal that he had never seen alive before, or that he'd never seen before, period. I wonder if he was able to accurately represent the animal, or if he kind of turned it into a very different creature than what it was when it was alive. Now to comparison with wallabies. Kangaroos and wallabies belong to the same taxonomic family, the Macropodidae, and often the same genera, but kangaroos are specifically categorized into the 4 larger species of the family. The term wallaby is an informal designation generally used for any macropod that is smaller than a kangaroo or a wallaroo that is not being designated otherwise. We move now to biology and behaviour. Firstly, to locomotion. Kangaroos are the only large animals to use hopping as a means of locomotion. The comfortable hopping speed for a red kangaroo is about 70% of potential energy is stored in the elastic tendons. At slow speeds, it employs pentapedal locomotion, using its tail to form a tripod with its two forelimbs, while bringing its hind feet forward. Both pentapedal walking and fast hopping are energetically costly. Hopping at moderate speeds is the most energy efficient, and a kangaroo moving about 15 kilometers per hour, which is 9.3 miles per hour, maintains energy consistency more than similarly sized animals running at the same speed. Interesting. That is a weird one, that they maintain more energy when they go at a medium pace than animals of the same size. Interesting. Kangaroos have single-chambered stomachs, quite unlike those of cattle and sheep, which have 4 compartments. They sometimes regurgitate the vegetation they've eaten, chew it as cud, and then swallow it again for final digestion. However, this is a different, more strenuous activity than it is in ruminants, and does not take place as frequently. Different species of kangaroos have different diets, although all are strict herbivores. The eastern grey kangaroo is predominantly a grazer and eats a wide variety of grasses, whereas some other species, such as the red kangaroo, include significant amounts of shrubs in their diets. Smaller species of kangaroos also consume hypogeal fungi. Many species are nocturnal and crepuscular, usually spending the hot days resting in the shade, and the cool evening, nights and mornings moving about and feeding. Because of its grazing habitats, the kangaroo has developed specialized teeth that are rare among mammals. Its incisors are able to crop grass close to the ground, and its molars chop and grind the grass. Since the two sides of the lower jaw are not joined or fused together, the lower incisors are far apart, giving the kangaroo a wider bite. The silica in grass is abrasive, so kangaroos' molars are ground down and they actually move forward in the mouth before they eventually fall out and are replaced by new teeth that grow in the back. This process is known as polyphyodonty, and amongst other mammals only occurs in elephants and manatees. What a random connection. So the teeth grows at the back, and then you're chewing and you're using it, and it grinds down and it goes more to the front so new ones can grow in at the back, and then it gets to the front and falls out, and then the chewing goes back to the ones that earlier and they move forward. What a weird kind of like construction line way of having teeth. Interesting. Anyway, let's talk about the absence of digestive methane release. Despite having herbivorous diets similar to ruminants such as cattle, which release large quantities of digestive methane through exhaling and eructation, which is burping, kangaroos release virtually none. The hydrogen byproduct of fermentation is instead converted into acetate, which is then used to provide further energy. Scientists are interested in the possibility of transferring the bacteria responsible for this process from kangaroos to cattle, since the greenhouse gas effect of methane is 23 times greater than that of carbon dioxide per molecule. That would be interesting if we could figure out how to do that. Now, we move to social and sexual behaviour. larger aggregations display high amounts of interactions and complex social structures comparable to that of ungulates. One common behaviour is nose touching and sniffing, which mostly occurs when an individual joins a group. The kangaroo performing the sniffing gains much information from smell cues. This behaviour enforces social cohesion without consequent aggression. During mutual sniffing, if one kangaroo is smaller, it will hold its body closer to the ground and its head will quiver, which serves as a possible form of submission. Greetings between males and females are common, with larger males being the most involved in meeting females. Most other non-antagonistic behaviour occurs between mothers and their young. Mother and young reinforce their bond through grooming. A mother will groom her young while it is suckling or after it finished suckling. A joey will nuzzle its mother's pouch if it wants access to it. Then do sexual activity. The sexual activity of kangaroos consists of consort pairs. Ostrich females roam wildly and attract the attention of males with conspicuous signals. A male will monitor a female and follow every movement. He sniffs her urine to see if she is ostrich, a process exhibiting the Flehmen response. The male will then proceed to approach her slowly to avoid alarming her. If the female does not run away, the male will continue by licking, pawing and scratching her, and copulation will follow. After copulation is over, the male will move on to another female. Consort pairing may take several days, and the copulation is also long. Thus, a consort pair is likely to attract the attention of a rival male. As larger males are tending bonds with females near ostriches, smaller males will tend females that are farther from ostriches. Interesting. Dominant males can also avoid having to sort through females to determine their reproductive status by searching for tending bonds held by the largest male they can displace without a fight. But if they have to fight, let's read about that. Fighting has been described in all species of kangaroos. Fights between kangaroos can be brief or long and ritualized. In highly competitive situations, such as males fighting for access to ostrich females, or at limited drinking spots, the fights are brief. Both sexes will fight for drinking spots, but long ritualized fighting or boxing is largely done by males. Smaller males fight more often near females in ostriches, while the larger male in consorts do not seem to get involved. Ritualized fights can arise suddenly when males are grazing together. However, most fights are preceded by two males scratching and grooming each other. One or both of them will adopt a high standing posture, with one male issuing a challenge by grasping the other male's neck with its forepaw. Sometimes the challenge will be declined. Large males often reject challenges by smaller males. That's very interesting. During fighting, the combatants adopt a high standing posture and paw at each other's heads, shoulders and chests. They will also lock forearms and wrestle and push each other, as well as balance on their tails to kick each other in the abdomen. You can look this up, and there are many kangaroo fight videos of kangaroos fighting each other recorded in nature documentaries on YouTube, and it's quite an interesting and very heavily ritualized activity, and it does look eerily eerily similar to a kind of scrappy form of human boxing. Brief fights are similar, except there is no forearm locking. The losing combatant seems to use kicking more often, perhaps to parry the thrusts of the eventual winner. A winner is decided when a kangaroo breaks off the fight and retreats. Winners are able to push their opponents backwards or down to the ground. They also seem to grasp their opponents when they break contact and push them away. The initiators of the fights are usually the winners. These fights may serve to establish dominance hierarchies among males, as winners of fights have been seen to displace their opponent from resting sites later in that day. Interesting that they kind of remember who won the fight. Dominant males may also pull grass to intimidate subordinate ones. Interesting. Now to predators. Kangaroos have a few natural predators. The thylacine, considered by paleontologists to have once been a major natural predator of the kangaroo, is now extinct. Other extinct predators included the marsupial lion, which is terrifying if you Google it. It's very strange. The megalania and the wanapi. However, with the arrival of humans at least 50,000 years ago and the introduction of the dingo about 5,000 years ago, kangaroos have had to adapt. Wedge-tailed eagles and other raptors usually eat kangaroo carrion. Goannas and other carnivorous reptiles also pose a danger to smaller kangaroo species when other food sources are lacking. Along with dingoes, introduced species such as foxes, feral cats, and both domestic and feral dogs pose a threat to kangaroo populations. Kangaroos and wallabies are adept swimmers and often flee into waterways if presented with the option. If pursued into the water, a large kangaroo may use its forepaws to hold the predator underwater so as to drown it. Another defensive tactic described by witnesses is catching the attacking dog with the forepaws and disemboweling it with its hind legs. Now we move to adaptions. Kangaroos have developed a number of adaptations to a dry, infertile country and a highly variable climate. As with all marsupials, the young are born at a very early stage of development, after a gestation of 31 to 36 days. At this stage, only the forelimbs are somewhat developed to allow the newborn to climb to the pouch and attach to a teat. In comparison, a human embryo at a similar stage of development would be about 7 weeks old, and premature babies born at least than 23 weeks are usually not mature enough to survive. When the joey is born, it is about the size of a lima bean. The joey will usually stay in the pouch for about 9 months, which is 180 to 320 days for the western grey, before starting to leave the pouch for smaller periods of time. It is usually fed by its mother until reaching 18 months. The female kangaroo is usually pregnant in permanence, except on the day she gives birth. However, she has the ability to freeze the development of an embryo until the previous joey is able to leave the pouch. Wow. This is known as produce sperm, and females will conceive only if enough rain has fallen to produce a large quantity of green vegetation. Kangaroos and wallabies have large elastic tendons in their legs. They store elastic strain energy in the tendons of these large hind legs, providing most of the energy required for each hop by the spring action of the tendons rather than by any muscular effort. This is true in all animal species which have muscles connected to their skeletons through elastic elements, such as tendons, but the effect is more pronounced in kangaroos. There is also a link between the hopping action and breathing. As the feet leave the ground, air is expelled from the lungs. Bringing the feet forward, ready for landing, refills the lungs, providing further energy efficiency. Studies of kangaroos and wallabies have demonstrated beyond the minimum energy expenditure required to hop at all, increased speed requires very little extra effort, much less than the same speed increase in, say, a horse, dog, or human, and the extra energy is required to carry weight. For kangaroos, the key benefit of hopping is not speed to escape predators. The top speed of a kangaroo is no higher than that of a similarly sized quadruped, and the Australian native predators are in any case less fearsome than that of other countries. But economy is the reason that they hop. In an infertile country with highly variable weather patterns, like Australia, it can have crazy storms and intense wind, crazy thunder, instant flooding, or it can have weeks and months of not a drop of water. It's a very terrifying continent to be on. You can be in the middle of a drought and all of your grass can be completely dead, and then within the matter of a few minutes you can be trying to prepare your house for a flood. It's crazy the way it works. Anyway, the ability of a kangaroo to travel long distances at moderately high speed in search of food sources is crucial to survival. New research has revealed that the kangaroo's tail acts as a third leg rather than just a balancing strut. Kangaroos have a unique 3-stage walk where they plant their front legs and tail first and then push off their tail, followed lastly by the back legs. The propulsive force of the tail is equal to that of both the front and hind legs combined and performs as much work as what a human leg does walking can at the same speed. A DNA sequencing project of the genome of a member of the kangaroo family, the Tamar wallaby, was started in 2004. It was a collaboration between Australia, mainly funded by the state of Victoria, and the National Institute of Health in the United States. The Tamar's genome was fully sequenced in 2011. The genome of a marsupial such as the kangaroo is of great interest to scientists studying comparative genomics, because marsupials are at an ideal degree of evolutionary divergence from humans. Mice are too close and have not developed many different functions, while birds are genetically too remote. The dairy industry could also benefit from this project. Interesting that there is a reference here, but it doesn't say how it could benefit or why it might benefit from this. Interesting. Okay. Now we go to blindness. Eye disease is rare but not new among kangaroos. The first official report of kangaroo blindness took place disease had spread across the desert to Western Australia. Australian authorities were concerned the disease could spread to other livestock and possibly humans. Researchers at the Australian Animal Health Laboratories in Geelong detected a virus called the Wallal virus in 2 species of midges, believed to have been the carriers. Veterinarians also discovered fewer than 3% of kangaroos exposed to the virus developed blindness. Wow, so a lot more were developed than was phenotypically shown through the virus. Now we move to reproduction and life cycle. Kangaroos. Reproduction is similar to that of opossums. The egg, still contained in the shell membrane, a few micrometers thick, and with only a small quantity of yolk within it, descends from the ovary into the uterus. There, it is fertilized and quickly develops into a neonate. Even in the largest kangaroo species, the red kangaroo, the neonate emerges after only 33 days. Usually, only one young is born at a time. It is blind, hairless, and only a few centimeters long. Its hind legs are mere stumps. It instead uses its more developed forelegs to climb its way through the thick fur on its mother's abdomen into the pouch, which takes about 3 to 5 minutes. Once in the pouch, it fastens onto one of the 4 teats and starts to feed. Almost immediately, the mother's sexual cycle starts again. Another egg descends into the uterus and she becomes sexually receptive. Then, if she mates and a second egg is fertilized, its development is temporarily halted. This is known as embryonic diapause and will occur in times of drought and in areas with poor food sources. Meanwhile, the neonate in the pouch grows rapidly. After about 190 days, the baby, Joey, is sufficiently large and developed to make its full emergence out of the pouch. After sticking its head out for a few weeks until it eventually feels safe enough to fully emerge, from then on it spends increasing time in the outside world and eventually, after about 235 days, it leaves the pouch for the first time. The lifespan of kangaroos averages at 6 years in the wild, to in excess of 20 years in captivity, varying by the species. Most individuals, however, do not reach maturity in the wild. Now, to their interactions with humans. The kangaroo has always been a very important animal for Aboriginal Australians. For its meat, hide, bone, and tendon, kangaroo hides were also sometimes used for recreation. In particular, there are accounts for some tribes, the Kurunai. There are accounts of some tribes, the Kurunai, used stuffed kangaroo scrotum as a ball for traditional football games of Mangruk. In addition, there were important dreaming stories and ceremonies involving the kangaroo. Orange is a current kangaroo dreaming site in the Northern Territory. Dreaming, the concept of what dreaming is extraordinarily hard to explain. It's a unique experience / time / idea, conceptual idea of reality and creation that the Indigenous Australians have that covers multiple philosophical ideas and kind of comprises them into one state, an idea about a thing. So the dreaming can also be a time you dedicate to remembering attacks, but it's definitely something I'd like to read about in the future if you want to suggest it to me in the comments. Anyway, unlike many of the smaller macropods, kangaroos have fared well since European settlement. European settlers cut down forests to create vast greenlands for sheep and cattle grazing, and added stock watering points in arid areas, and have subsistently reduced the numbers of dingoes. Kangaroos are shy and retiring by nature, and in normal circumstances present no threat to humans. In 2003, Lulu, an eastern grey, which had been hand-reared, saved a farmer's life by alerting family members to his location when he was injured by a falling tree branch. Wow, that's amazing. She received the RSPCA Australia National Animal Valour Award on the 19th of May in 2004. Wow, that's quite interesting. I wonder how the kangaroo did that. There are very few records of kangaroos attacking humans without provocation. Of course, that's most animals. I think most animals on the earth don't attack too much unless provoked. However, several such unprovoked attacks in 2004 spurred fears of a rabies-like disease, possibly affecting the marsupials. The only reliably documented case of a fatality from a kangaroo attack occurred in New South Wales in 1936, a long time ago. A hunter was killed when he tried to rescue his 2 dogs from a heated fray. And there's a modern version of this story, but the man didn't die. But if you look at like man saves a dog from kangaroo or something, there's a famous video on the internet where a kangaroo has taken a dog and is strangling it, and the owner fights the kangaroo for the dog. That's essentially it. But yeah, interesting that the man died in the same way as that recent trending video, except in the video the person didn't die, of course. I didn't know that. Other suggested causes for erratic and dangerous kangaroo behaviour include extreme thirst and hunger. In July of 2011, a male red kangaroo attacked a 94-year-old woman in her own backyard, as well as her son and 2 police officers responding to the situation. The kangaroo was capsicum sprayed, which is pepper sprayed, and later put down after the attack. Kangaroos, even those that are non-domesticated, can communicate with humans, according to a research study. The research study that was talking about communication with humans actually came out very recently. I listened to a report in the BBC World News that said that kangaroos can perform a behaviour that's similar to a domesticated animal in communicating for asking help for food or asking help for something. Sadly, I can't comment on it much more than that, just because I didn't read the full study myself, though. Anyway, now let's go to conflict with vehicles. 9 out of 10 animal collisions in Australia involve kangaroos. A collision with a vehicle is capable of killing a kangaroo. Kangaroos dazzled by headlights or startled by engine noises often leap in front of cars. Since kangaroos in mid-bounce can reach speeds of around As a result, kangaroo crossing signs are commonplace in Australia, and a kangaroo crossing sign is just like a picture of a kangaroo, a classic silhouette of a kangaroo, and you see them all over Australia. Vehicles that frequent isolated roads where roadside assistance may be scarce are often fitted with roo bars to minimise damage caused by collision. Bonnet-mounted devices which are designed to scare wildlife off the road with ultrasound and other methods have been devised and marketed. If a female is a victim of a collision, animal welfare groups ask that the pouch be checked for any surviving joeys, in which case it may be removed to a wildlife sanctuary or a veterinary surgeon for rehabilitation. Likewise, when an adult kangaroo is injured in a collision, a vet, the RSPCA Australia or the National Parks and Wildlife Service can be consulted for instructions on proper care. In New South Wales, rehabilitation of kangaroos is carried out by volunteers from Wires. Council roadsides often list phone numbers for callers and to report injured animals. Very interesting. Now, just second lastly to emblems and popular culture. The kangaroo is a recognisable symbol of Australia. The kangaroo and emu feature on the Australian coat of arms. Kangaroos have also been featured on coins, most notably the 5 kangaroos on the Australian $1 coin. The Australian-made logo consists of a golden kangaroo and a green triangle to show that product is grown or made in Australia. Registered trademarks of early Australian companies using the kangaroo included Young, Schomburger and Co., Walla Walla brand leather skins in 1890, Arnold V. Hen in 1892, whose emblem showed a family of kangaroos playing with a skipping rope. Robert Lascelles and Co. linked the speed of the animal with its velocipedes in 1896, while some overseas manufacturers, like that of the Kangaroo safety matches made in Japan of the early 1900s, also adopted the symbol. Even today, Australia's national airlines Qantas uses a bouncing kangaroo for its logo. The kangaroo and wallaby feature predominantly in Australian sports teams and mascots. Examples include the Australian National Rugby League team, the Kangaroos, and the Australian National Rugby Union team, the Wallabies. In a nationwide competition held in 1978 for the 12th Commonwealth Games by the Games Australia Foundation Limited in 1982, Hugh Edwards' design was chosen, a simplified form of 6 thick stripes arranged in pairs extending from along the edges of a triangular centre represent both the kangaroo in full flight and a stylized A for Australia. Kangaroos are well represented in films, television, books, toys and souvenirs around the world. Skippy the bush kangaroo was a popular 1960s Australian children's television series about a fictional pet kangaroo. Kangaroos are featured in the Rolf Harris song Tie Me Kangaroo Down Sport and several Christmas carols. And very lastly, we talk about kangaroo meat, the slightly more controversial part of the Wikipedia to end on. The kangaroo has been a source of food for the indigenous Australian for tens of thousands of years. Kangaroo meat is high in protein and low in fat, about 2%, which is very low. Kangaroo meat has a high concentration of conjugated linoleic acid, CLA, other foods and is a rich source of vitamins and minerals. Low-fat diets, rich in coelai, have been studied for their potential in reducing obesity and atherosclerosis. Kangaroo meat is sourced from wild animals and is seen as many as the best source of population control programs, as opposed to culling them as pests, whereas carcasses are left in paddocks. Kangaroos are harvested by highly skilled, licensed shooters in accordance with a strict code of practice and are protected by state and federal legislation. Kangaroo meat is exported to many countries around the world. Well, there you go. That's quite interesting. And yeah, so as I was saying before, I think in the first episode, if you have any kangaroo meat and it is a product of Australia and you see it in your store, I would highly recommend you to purchase it. As it says there, it's state regulated, so you'll know that they're not risking the populations in the wild, and it's helping reduce the numbers, just because overpopulation of kangaroos is quite a problem. And also it's packed with vitamins, minerals, and is quite low in fat. It's not that being high in fat is a bad thing necessarily, but it's that foods that are very high in protein and low in fat are harder to come by and are quite interesting utilities to be able to have when preparing a meal. So that's my little tidbit of advice at the end. And also furthermore, kangaroo meat is the only red meat that I consume. I have lean meats, but just because of the environmental and ethical variables in red meat production and farming, I don't eat any red meat at the moment. But yeah, anyway, I hope you have a lovely day, a lovely life. Thank you so much for watching this video. Learning about animals is one of my passions. Learning about the environment, environmental science, stuff like that is one of my passions. So please suggest me stuff about that, or even anything that you think I wouldn't be thinking about right now. Something crazy off the top of your head. I'd love to know. Anyway, have a lovely sleep, a lovely pause, and relax, and